Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about money games. Stocks and bonds are owned by a multinational company called the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation of the United States, the DCC. So all of the assets that people have in companies and in investment institutions like Charles Schwab and index funds, they are actually owned by 880 entities that are all connected to this group. And they pool the assets together to be used in a one quadrillion derivatives market. There's also a version of that in Europe. It's called Euroclear. There is a version in Canada called the Canadian Securities Depository in Canada. And the investment asset of the public common people is used as gambling chips in the derivatives market.
Like literally there's a ledger. So me and you buy stock. Back in the day, you used to get like a certificate. Remember we were like in library class as kids, you get a certificate saying that you own the stock. Like now, there's just this ledger that keeps track of who owns the stock, but literally the stocks are held by this company. So you don't physically get anything anymore. You don't possess part of the company anymore. It's really fucked up, but it's just a shell game. It's just, hey, I'm moving this over here. And all they do is have a ledger that keeps track of the movement, but nothing ever changes hands. And it's really crazy. We talked about this in past podcasts, how you don't own your house anymore. You don't own the land. Like literally, you don't own shit. You don't even own the stocks and bonds that you're investing your money in. You're investing your money. It's like monopoly money. The bank has all the assets, but even the bank is just keeping track of assets for somebody else. It's really... Remember how you said the shit's underwhelming? It's like, this is fucking backwards. Like, so you mean to tell me that I don't own shit, that they get my money, and then my money goes to somebody else, and if it grows, I get more money. If it don't grow, it's crazy. It was the same thing that happened about 5 years ago with GameStop. I didn't understand the situation until later on. What I realized, what these companies were doing, these rich people and these investment companies were finding out. They would find companies that they knew were going to fail eventually. And so what they do is they would buy it all up, and they would hedge the bets against it. And then when it started to fail, they would just acquire more of the company. But then the company showed any kind of life, then they would dump it. It was crazy how what they were literally doing were causing companies to fail on purpose. So kind of like gentrification. They were running the property value down just to buy this company. And they were saying the company was poorly run, but they were the ones running it poorly to make it so they could acquire more of that asset. And they would make a hedge bet on it, and before the market would come in, they would sell. It was crazy. It was like they were fixing a football game or a basketball game or something.
Piracy. It's piracy.
But they were doing it with people's real lives. Like these companies would disappear.
That is how the 2008 real estate financial crash happened.
Well, even with that, going back to Clinton, there was they call that rampant speculation. What it was that they were basically giving people credit they knew they couldn't afford. Everybody had these big ass house payments, and we like to talk about black people because we black people. A lot of problems with black folks is once they get that big house, they think they need the big car instead of them actually budgeting. Many of us don't understand budgeting. I'm not saying that I do, but what I'm saying is that literally once you got that house, you thought that you needed the car to go with it, and people would sit here and live outside their means, and that was a huge part of that 2008 crash, housing crash that you're talking about, that rampant speculation where everybody was, look, we're all super prosperous, we're all this, we're all that, and they weren't. Nobody was minding the shed. Nobody was paying attention to the banks who took advantage of it, and they overextended themselves. Every time we sit here and have an intelligent conversation, it drives you crazy because these banking families or banking, whatever you want, clans or conglomerates, whatever you want to call them, they're playing both sides. Whether it's a war, whether it's just simply poverty versus rich, whether it's oil, whatever the asset is, somebody's making money on both sides of the situation. And that manipulation right there is what's crazy. One of the big things that was in the media, but I haven't heard anything else about it, wasn't last week, but it was a week before last, where they're talking about Cuba had basically froze everybody's assets. The banks just simply shut down. You couldn't get your money out the bank. And we had talked about this in the past where people always think that this whole socialism idea or communism idea would be something that would take 10, 15 years. We would spot it and we could avoid it. But what happens if all your money is frozen and the only place to get money is the government, or the only place to get goods and services is the government, the only person employing everybody is the government, then overnight you have socialism. It's not this gradual thing. You know, we talk about it from the point of view that you have a lot of college kids who think that socialism is a great idea because, you know, you're being taken care of. And I'm like, yeah, that's called childhood. You should grow up past that. The idea of raising a child is I do it for my child until they can do it for themselves. And I teach you how to do it gradually. Then all of a sudden, when you turn 15, 16, you start paying your own bills and you get your own vehicle and you pay a little bit of rent. And then you go to college and you're in a dorm or you're in a different situation. And then eventually you no longer need my help as a parent. But not anymore. These motherfuckers want to be taken care of until the day they die. They want you to wipe their ass for them. And so when you live in that situation, you're beholden to somebody. So this whole idea that it's a gradual socialism thing, maybe it is in America, but it showed in this different country that you can do socialism overnight if you just take everybody's assets and you don't own anything anymore. So yeah, that whole idea that this banking is our friend, no, they're just a company, just a corporation who manipulates you at the highest of levels.
In 2023, in June of 2023, the book The Great Taking, written by David Rogers Webb, was published. The book goes on to outline the creation of the DCC and its subsidiary company, Cedenco, Cedenco. But understand that in the event of economic distress, all of the assets that you own are pledged as collateral for large banks and financial institutions to use. Euroclear is a Belgium-based financial services company that specializes in the clearing and settlement of securities and transactions, as well as the safekeeping and asset servicing of these securities. In a bank deposit example, when an economic crisis hits, your bank account deposits will be used to bail out the bank, which happened with Silicon Valley Bank about a year and a half ago. In a traditional setting, when you bought a stock in a company, you would get a stock certificate. In the 1970s, trade volumes increased so much that trading with paper certificates became difficult because they sought a lazy solution. And they want to digitize everything and use computers, although back then they were using punch cards in the computers. Jump forward to the 2020s and you have the tokenization of assets such as homes, cars, and art that can be traded for derivative gambling. All of your deposits, stocks, and bonds can be taken away at any time and used in a big fish take little fish strong arm scheme. And actually, they already own them. And that's where we come to Cedenco, Cedenco, which legally owns 80% of all American stocks and bonds. This exists outside of bankruptcy court. So bankruptcy court will not free you from this. The Uniform Commercial Code defines your investment not as a property right, but as an investment claim. It is secondary and subservient to Cedenco. The people that own the DCC are the same people that own the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and any of the Federal Reserve banks in the United States. These people are referred to as the participants or the member firms. The Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests have no effect on these privately owned corporations. William Dentzer. William Dentzer was one of the founding members that created the DCC and worked for USAID, or the United States Agency for Development. Before starting DCC, he was working for the USAID agency. Now, when governments pledge money to fight wars in Ukraine and Gaza, the money that is earmarked for those countries is sent to the World Bank instead of the country that it was intended for.
It's basically going to an account for that country. It's not going to that country. You dig? It's like there's a debit card for that country. That's fucked up, man.
Yep. So then, which is crazy because why did the World Bank even get involved? It's like, we'll take that. Says who? Like, on what authority?
I'm going to give an example of that. Well, remember when all that aid went to Haiti because it was an earthquake or a tsunami, whatever the fuck happened to Haiti, and everybody went after Wyclef. Like he's a scammer. I don't know if he was or wasn't. I don't know enough information about it, but I know this: that money wasn't in one of these official accounts because that was a big deal with that. Remember, the whole big deal was the Clintons had that marker, if you would say. The Clintons were in charge of that, so you had to go through Hillary and Bill Clinton just to get your money to Haiti, and that money never got to Haiti.
Right.
It was
That was the
$600 million.
clearinghouse. The same way Bill Gates set up a clearinghouse for any people who wanted to get that procedure done in Africa.
Oh yeah.
Right. Now, but check it
That's
out.
crazy.
When Densner died, the Wall Street Journal ran his obituary and mentioned that he was a CIA operative.
No shit.
And he led early clearinghouses for stock trading in New York City. He was appointed by the New York governor at the time, Nelson Rockefeller, in the 1960s to run those clearinghouses. He had no banking experience when he was given the job. So a Rockefeller gave him the job to basically create the art of derivatives. There were no derivatives in 1960. And then once he started these clearinghouses, it was the act of these clearinghouses and the type of work that they were doing which paved the way for derivatives. So the reason why the DCC has taken hold over all these financial institutions, not because it was done federally, but it was done state by state until all of the states were under the same UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. And it began in the 1990s. It was completed by the year 2004. There's a loophole. And there's a loophole to avoiding any interaction with the DCC if you are owning a stock. And that is to get a physical stock certificate.
Yep.
But
we had talked about that when we were kids.
yes.
I remember we had bought like stock in Disney in our library class back in '83, and so it just, if you're doing a bunch of trades, it just doesn't make sense for certificates to exist. Because you're almost like buying it on the marker. You're buying it on, like, hey, I'm buying it, but I'm selling it by the end of the day, or day trading. If you're day trading, they're not going to send you a certificate. But back in the day, we also held the assets a lot longer. You bought stock in. I had stock in Kodak. No, Polaroid. Excuse me. I'm lying. No, I had stock in Kodak because I had a Kodak camera. Polaroid sued them and they said, okay, send your camera back and I'll send you some stock. And that's I had stock certificates back when I was, 8 years old. So yeah, back then they didn't expect you to trade that asset like we're trading it now in minutes and hours and days instead of months and years.
2025 will see the end of direct registration, which is owning your own shares of a company and getting rid of physical stock certificates. This is about the concentration of assets and taking everything from the common person to shift people into a debt-based gig economy where you rent everything and you own nothing.
Not just that, is that they every time there's a story of success, people that made it but they weren't supposed to make it, people that weren't they didn't have the right families or whatever. I think it's up in Connecticut. There's a bunch of these little towns that are super rich, or these cities that are super rich, and one of the richest ones in America. One of them is because there's a casino up there that makes a shitload of money. But another one is, I think it's Connecticut, but there's a couple cities where all these people bought stock in Coca-Cola back in 1940 or whatever it was, and they all just sat there with these stock certificates. Then all of a sudden, somebody goes and visit them, like in the 80s or whatever, and they are all sitting there, or it might be the 90s. These people are like in their 80s and 90s, they're old, but somebody realized that all these people are sitting here with Coca-Cola stock that had tripled and quadrupled over and over and paid a dividend. So they were old. So all these people just became millionaires just because people found out that they were sitting on Coca-Cola stock that their grandparents bought or some crazy shit like that. So like that, those stories right there, they're heartwarming. But the motherfucking man don't like that shit, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden, that
So
those people,
they've been using obfuscation. They have been they have purposely made all this complex jargon around something that is very simple, money. And they create games to play with other people's money. That's what exactly we're talking about here. Is that they play games with other people's money and
not just
how
money, but other people's lives.
their
I have two.
livelihoods, their homes,
Yes,
and their
and
assets,
that's
which
what
is
I was.
soon to be their cars
But
and other belongings.
that's what I was saying. When they literally were manipulating these companies to fail just so they can hedge their bets, those people who may not recover. How many? Prime example. Uh, Cabela's. I grew up shopping, like buying fishing lures from Cabela's. I think I don't want to say Hastings, but they were someplace in the middle of Nebraska. It might be York. No, it's not York. It's further away, but it doesn't
It
matter.
was in the middle of
Cabela's,
nowhere.
yeah, middle of nowhere, Nebraska. Well, Cabela's decided to get a credit card, and they were doing super well. This credit card was killing it. So this venture capitalist came in there and sold off the credit card company, and then he sold off the company to Bass Pro, and they moved that company from Nebraska. That town never recovered, and damn near everybody in that town worked for Cabela's, and they were all making. Let's just say, I'm just throwing a number out there, all making 50, 60,000. And this is about, you know, 14 years ago, something like that. So it was really good money. So now you're going to pull this out, and all you did was sell off these assets, and now all of a sudden they belong to their competitor, and they were actually more financially stable than Bass Pro. So that's that shit right there. We're talking about people's lives, and now that town is defunct. Um, I got two examples on a personal level of that situation, and I told you this, like my mom. I, th- we deal with a small bank in Iowa because I'm a member because of where I work, and they would do certain things, and my mom would show up and she would just make a loan payment. Well, what they would do, they they didn't just make a loan payment as in paying the principal or excuse me, they didn't pay the interest on the loan or the fees on the loan. What they would do is pay the principal. By paying the principal, you're paying the loan down early, and now you have less fees. Well, now she's in Memphis. And she, my mom don't tell me everything. So she had a loan for roughly $8,000. And one night she goes to the casino and she hits for $4,000. So she pays her bills, but she had $2,700 left. She goes to the bank and she says, "I put this on my loan." They put it on the interest. So now all she's doing is paying off her fees. She ain't paying off her principal. So she's like, "Hey," she calls me like, "Babe, how come my loan didn't go down when I paid it?" I'm like, "What's going on?" So I said, "Ma, you got to tell them the principal." So now she went in there, talked to the bank manager, talked to everybody in there. She's like, when I drop, if you pay the principal off early, you don't have all these fees. You don't have these interest payments. But that's right there is something that she assumed because our other credit union did it automatically. She assumed that they would do it. So by paying it off early, she don't have that $3,000 in fees and shit. If you pay the principal, same thing when you pay your house payment. People tell you, "Hey, add an extra $50 to it. You'll pay it off like 14 years early." And people are like, "Why?" Because you're not paying the payment, you're paying towards the principal. Just knowing those financial terms. Um, and like I said, you know this other situation. If you want me to say who it was, I will. But there's this lady that I'm very close with. And at the time, she had a situation, and she calls me. She's like, "I need you to look into this." And so we go to the bank, and they were trying to foreclose on our house because she had missed three payments, and she didn't know what she was going to do. And I was like, I told the banker, I said, "Does she? How much money does she have in escrow?" And he goes, "Well, she has 1,200 in escrow." And I said, "Well, her payment's 300 a month. She's three payments behind. You're about to foreclose on her house, but she has enough money in escrow to pay her house off. That's fucked up. But instead, you're going to scare her to death, try to take her asset. That makes no sense." So I said, "Look, out of escrow, pay off her house, and give her her deed." That shit right there. That's the kind of evilness we're dealing with. Even the people that work there are so brainwashed that they don't realize that they're evil, or they don't realize that, hey, I can really help somebody. Your escrow account has all your tax money, has all your insurance money sitting right there. And if I'm about to pay my house off, I don't need those things now, do I? That's the hustle. That's the shell game. That's the evil banker taking people's ranches. You know, you'd watch the cowboy, and they would take the ranch, and that's that real shit right there. Why are you so evil that you want to take this asset when somebody actually has enough money unbeknownst to themselves that they could take care of that asset. So that's what we're dealing with. The banks have become. You think the banks are normal. You think that we need them. You think that it's a way of life. And you've been so brainwashed and you've been stolen, you've been robbed so many times, excuse me, and your money's been stolen so many times that you think being robbed is the natural way of life. And you don't even know how to defend yourself. And you don't know who to go to report them, or you don't realize that you got the money, that they need you. So until we realize that we need to beat their ass, or that they owe us, we don't get it.
But they hide behind laws and law enforcement while they
And
fuck people
contracts.
over, and
Yeah,
contracts
yes.
and lawyers.
It's the tertiary law that we don't get. That hey, I
But
just signed this.
what that is though, okay, this is the thing. This goes back to manipulation and gamifying things so that people don't have to be honest when they're transacting with you, and they're hoping that you're not smart enough to
That
catch
you're ignorant
what they're
to it. Yeah.
doing.
Yep. Yep.
It's all manipulation.
I
Now,
think also
in
also
in
I
an
think
ideal situation, you could just draw your sword and just cut that motherfucker's head off, or just shoot that
period.
person.
Period.
You know.
Hold it. We got to. That's deep. We remember when we were sovereign. Remember if somebody had a duel, or they had a showdown at the OK Corral. Me and you, we had a duel that was legal. You know why? Because you were your own country and I was my own country. But we lost our sovereignty. That's not murder. If me and you have a disagreement and we decide that we're going to bet our lives on this disagreement, that was perfectly legal. And all of a
There
sudden
are
it's like,
some police departments in the West, preferably in the West, that if two men have a disagreement, they can go in front of the police station and duke it out.
it's called mutual combat.
Mutual
Yes.
combat.
No, for the record, they do not have that in Las Vegas. My little cousin got into a fight recently. And I said, hey, man, ain't that mutual combat? And he was like, he said the first thing the officer said is, we don't have mutual combat in Nevada. But
So
Texas
he's
has
aware
it.
of it.
Yeah, yes. Here's the crazy part when it comes to these laws and these rules. If you bring them up, motherfuckers know what to say. Like, hey, we don't have that in this county. That's okay in Douglas County, but it's not okay in Sarpy County. Like
So,
that's
but
crazy.
listen, so the definition of mutual combat is when two people agree to fight each other with deadly weapons, but not in self-defense. It is a consensual fight on equal terms that arises from a moment of passion. It's very funny.
So hold it. They stuck that passion in there. Passion was a part of it
It
before.
is a
But,
moment of passion. That's so weird. If
but
someone dies during a mutual combat, the charge may be reduced to voluntary manslaughter. It is
no,
also known as mutual affray, Affray. This is
oh,
different from a duel, which is a prearranged fight between two people.
see how deep that was. Basically, they answered everything we talked about. They brought up. In Texas, remember they had that he needed killing. If you catch somebody with your wife and you kill them in passion, you would get off. Like, oh man, I caught that nigga on top of my wife. And you would get off. So the courts really were set up for the benefit of certain people. Um, Here's my thing with this contract law and this banking. What it is, it's a form of self-inflicted slavery. If you don't understand this contract, you're putting yourself into slavery. We saw that shit with Prince in Warner Brothers, where he wrote "slave" on his face,
Right.
and he cleared that up. He said, I'm not equating myself to a slave." My people in the 1800s. What I'm saying is that this is a contract that I can never benefit from and I can never get out of. That I'm literally everything I do benefits this company, but nothing they do benefits me. I get paid. I'm the originator of this work. I create this art. I bring it out of nothing into somethingness, but you benefited. So
That
that's why.
is the part. So, okay, another way to look at the music industry is the musician does all of the work, because to go out on stage and jam and thrill people takes a lot of energy. And to do it
Hey,
consecutively over and over and over in
oh yeah,
different locations is a lot of work. Now,
draining.
the people will tell you, oh no, but it's a lot of work to file the publishing paperwork and all that. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
You sitting at a desk and you doing the same thing over and over. You're licking envelopes and you're mailing off shit and you're signing documents. You're not looking up anything. You're just mailing shit off.
Look, I on a personal level, I went through this with my wife. My wife is a performer. She's written a bunch of songs, and it would drive you crazy. Those kind of conversations. So one of the things I told her, I said, never let anybody pay for your studio time. Did she listen? Of course not. So a nigga would like her, and all of a sudden she's in the studio. Oh, I was in the studio for free. I said, no, there's no such thing. So I would send her $300 or $400 to go back and pay that nigga for the time. Do not do that shit. And so this is where it gets blurry. When women are in the studio and a nigga like you, if you pay for the studio time, you get the masters. There was just a podcast where they were talking about that, and this chick goes, listen, dude, you hear what this girl said? Is that the rule? That's a dumb rule. Like,
you dumb as fuck.
She didn't even listen to what she said, but at least she was honest and honestly stupid. Here's what you got to understand: if we go to the studio, and I'm paying for the studio time, then the exchange I get are the original recordings. They're called the masters. That I paid for it. That's what I get. That's the contract. So what's happening is these producers are telling you, like, I got the studio. That's not a favor to you. They are not doing you a fucking favor by saying they got the studio time. What they're doing is they're taking your work from you. And so when she went back and paid the dude, he wigged out. He's like, oh, no, you have to pay me. She's like, no. She's at the time I was her fiance. We weren't married. We're dating. She's like, no. My man said I got to pay for the studio time. Pissed nigga off because what it was.
He thought he hit a lick.
Yes, he thought he got over. Hey, one of the worst contracts she had signed was old boy fucked her on a contract. She said, hey, man, I know this nigga. And so she said, I'm gonna sign it. So go ahead and sign it. I'll look at it later. When I looked at it, I said, hey, babe, did you read this motherfucker? She said, not really. I just trust him. I said, so what he did was, he literally had the rights to that music in other countries. He had Europe.
No, other markets.
Said, it was just one song, and so
doesn't matter.
No. So when I said, I showed her the parts that were fucked up. So she confronts the nigga and you know what he said? He said, all these other people coming in here, they're not going to go anywhere. They don't have any real talent. You got real talent. One of your songs is going to hit, and I just want to make sure that I'm a part of one of them songs. He admitted to cheating her. He said, all these people come through, they sit here and they've been toiling, they do it for years, they break microphones, they're dumb as hell, they fuck my printers up. He's like, they're garbage. But if I have a studio, this is how I pay my bills. But you're the only one that came through here with any real talent to write a song where I'm like, hey man, this song could, go places, or and so it was only one or two songs. But that's an example of contract law where you're literally making yourself a slave to somebody else. And as an artist, you just want to perform your work. You don't want to deal with that shit. So I used to have to go to Nashville and like, hey, no, don't do this or don't do that. And motherfuckers like, oh, that's your man? Like, yeah. That was the point of having my own record label in Omaha, was because I was learning the game. When I Forever Rain, I was learning how to do this shit. And so this shit's not super complicated. So the whole part about the publishing, you can register your shit with ASCAP yourself. You can register. I forgot. Who do we use? TuneCore. Once you register your shit, if your shit pops up anywhere or somebody buys your shit, you'll get your money. Now you got other means out there. But the whole idea that it's this super complicated thing and you won't get it, that's that shit. That's that slave owner saying, hey, just let me take care of you. And so that's that contract slavery shit. That's the shit that Prince is talking about on a much greater level. When you realize that Warner Brothers was living off him, I think don't get me wrong, I think Warner Brothers had three artists. It was Prince, Madonna, and somebody else that basically, had that company all through the 80s into the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, if it wasn't for them, Warner Brothers would have crumbled. And so you don't realize you're the most important aspect of this banking bullshit. You're the most important part, and you don't know your own power, and you're so afraid that you give your rights away, and you give your sovereignty away, and next thing you know, you're out on the street, and you've been paying on a house for 27 years. And, you only got a couple payments left and now you don't have it. You've been paying on the car this whole time, but the car breaks down and you don't realize that that car is an asset, or you can get another loan against that car to get the car fixed. Instead, you're buying shitty little warranties that
Yes.
that don't
Shitty
that don't
little
always work.
warranties.
Now hold it. I've used one warranty one time, and guess what? They said your Land Rover's not covered by this. We'll give you your $2,500 back. I'm like, nah, nigga, I need you to fix this motherfucker. You took my money, nigga. But now you're saying you can't. So yeah, that's that shit. I'm not talking against warranties. What I'm talking against is the fact that motherfuckers pay that shit as part of their car payment and don't realize they even have one, or they'll charge you for 2 or 3 warranties. What about that? I worked at Ford Credit at one point in time. That happened to people. Or here's another one. A lot of these old people would walk in and their car payment had always been 300 or 400. They're like, look, I want to buy this Lincoln Town car, but I don't want to pay more than 300, 400 a month. And they said, fine, give us 3,000. And what they did was they had a lease. So at the end of 4 years, you had these old white men would call and like, hey, how come I don't own my car? I'm like, that's because you leased it. What happened is they wanted to keep the same payment they had since 1974. And so the dealership, it was a dealership in Chicago, fucked all these people with that shit. They said, I don't want to pay more than 300 a month, 400 a month.
So then all those cars got repossessed.
They got repossessed. They never owned them to begin with. So yeah. So when at the end of the lease, they're like, hey, why don't I get to keep my car?
Yeah, but somebody has to come pick up their car, and that's a dude with a fucking dump.
Yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah.
Tow truck.
Yeah.
So,
and this is what I mean by a contract will fuck you. A contract, and like I said, so yeah, he kept his car payment what he's used to, but he didn't get that car is now a $63,000 car. You can't possibly get a $63,000 car for that price. But he doesn't understand it. All he knows is that every year or every 3 years, I would buy me a new town car or buy me a new Cadillac.
Yeah, but this ain't the 1970s no more, you dummy.
He don't call him a dummy. That's not fair, because what he did was he said he said what he wanted, and the dealer gave it to him. Didn't tell him the details though.
No, he's a dummy because he didn't read the fine print. He didn't ask the hard questions. He's a fucking dummy. Just call a dummy a dummy. So listen, man. Okay, I'm done talking about these dumb motherfuckers. Listen, back in 2011, shareholders of AIG, American International Group, insurance company, filed a $40 billion class action lawsuit against the United States government over the terms of its controversial bailout of AIG during the 2008 financial crisis.
Really?
In 2014, the trial case came to focus based on one strange little thing. In the cross-examination, the plaintiffs learned of a set of documents that the New York Federal Reserve Bank, the heart of America's Federal Reserve System, and the primary wheeler and dealer in the chaotic days of the global financial collapse, dramatically refers to as its Doomsday Book. This book was discovered and contained the various legal opinions in a memoranda that the Fed used to determine what power it has to manipulate the financial system in the event of a large-scale crisis. Now, what did I talk about earlier at the opening of this show? That they, if they wanted to, could manipulate the markets and take your assets, the DCC. Now, it seemed that there was a good chance that the central bank broke down its own rules with all its bailout mechanisms that it created in financial sleight of hand during the 2008 collapse. However, the plaintiff's reasonable request to see the book and examine these supposed emergency powers was immediately refused by the Fed. The New York Fed lawyer was adamant that the Fed would not open up the book for the court. And of the tens of thousands of documents that they have produced in the case, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has sought to retain confidentiality because of the internal sensitivity of only this one book. The court was eventually able to pry the relevant documents out of the Fed's clutches, but the Doomsday Book has remained under the court seal for years until now. How about them apples?
So we don't know what the hell that shit said until now.
They're just making shit up, dude. And they were going to be called on their bullshit. And they look for every angle they could, just like lawyers do, to hide their bullshit.
But hold it, just for the record. Let's not act like AIG are the good guys. Remember, AIG is one of these companies that like insured like slaves back in the day and shit.
Right.
Like, they've been around for years.
Yes.
So let's not get it twisted like AIG is some knight in shining armor. No, they were protecting their own interests. So let's not pretend like they were good people for suing the government. They were dickheads for suing the government who didn't want to pay back money they probably owed and realized the government had manipulated some shit that didn't benefit them. So they're not good people.
What's wild about all this is that we're sitting here talking about how they make shit up. And then in court, they don't want to show what's in this book. And I'm like, well, it's a doomsday book, so I mean it's relevant to the public.
Yeah, it's
talking about doomsday.
Yeah, I need to know about this shit.
Yeah. But so one reason that they didn't talk about the book until they were forced was because of a lot of the emergency measures the Fed ended up using during the financial crisis were outside the boundaries of past government interventions and weren't even in the Doomsday Book. Wow. Yep. That is something else, man.
They make the rules and they break the rules.
Yep.
Holy shit.
So it was described as an index with a summary that was about 2 inches thick with references to a number of other materials, forms, and memos, and described the summary as relatively modest, but said the entire book was voluminous. Yeah. Dude. So they just make shit up. I repeat this over and over. These motherfuckers are pirates, dude. This good old boy pirate cowboy mentality that goes through all this shit. And
capitalist, colonizer, all that shit.
Yeah,
all these different words.
But see, free markets though. This is the thing. I was disputing this with this cat from Oakland I was telling you about, and I was telling him, I said, bruh, like, you know, it has led to a lot of shitty things in the world, but capitalism is way better than communism, you know. And I said, you know, you working in a factory for the government, and you got lazy motherfuckers in that factory that don't do shit. You really think they deserve the same food stipend that you're getting, even though you're doing his work for him and he don't do shit? That's communism.
Hey, look, they talk about the same thing with socialism. They say they pretend to pay us, so we pretend to work. And they say that shit. And I'm not making fun of them but they're like, look, man, these motherfuckers really ain't paying us. So why should we do all this crazy work? Why should we make these great things and make this country look great when you're not taking care of the people? Look, the whole thing, the biggest problem is people don't know how to fight. We've talked about this in at least 5 of our podcasts. Knowing how to fight is the most important aspect of freedom, adulthood, whatever the hell you want to call this shit. And what happens is there are some conflicts that are physical. You know, at the time, I had a bunch of kids in the school system, and they got in a couple of fights, and I'm like, what are they supposed to do? They said, well, we want them to curl up on the ground and cover their head. I'm like, that's not how I was raised. My children aren't doing that. And then I asked, yeah, hold it, I'm not even done yet. If that child gets in a fight, even the child on the ground still gets in trouble. The child that covered his head and curled up in a fetal position, he or she still gets suspended for 2 days instead of suspended for 5 days. I'm like, so let me get it straight. So I didn't defend myself, but that's still considered a fight. So that shit. People don't, like, nah. Look, my mom would lock the screen door on me and make me fight people. Like, I ran home one time. I'm much younger. I'm like 4 or 5. I'm running home. She locked the screen door and said, hey, you got to fight them 2 dudes. I'm like, nigga, I'm like 5 years old. What the fuck? She's like, nah, I'm not raising no pussy. And she said, if I don't fight them, I'm gonna get my ass beat again by her. So I'm gonna get my ass beat at least twice. So you know what I'm saying? Either you fight them and win and don't get your ass beat at all, or you fight them and lose and I'm cool. But if you don't fight them, they're gonna beat your ass and I'm gonna beat your ass. And people are like, that's cruel, that's this, that's no. That's preparing me for life. But not every conflict is physical. Some conflicts you got to call your senator. Some conflicts you got to write a note. Some conflicts you got to sue. Some conflicts, there are different conflicts. We just don't know how to fight them. And also another thing is that we want the instant gratification. Sometimes you file an ELC complaint, and I had a situation recently where my wife filed an ELC complaint, and she struggled with that for about 4 months, and eventually it went to a mediation where you're supposed to meet with that person. Do you know that manager quit? Now, my wife couldn't believe it. I said, yeah. I said, that white man realized that he did it. He literally chose you only because you're black. And he literally made these statements only because you're a black female. He didn't do this. Our son passed. He kept asking when she's coming. He would ask the coworkers, when is she coming back to work? I'll ask all these different questions. My wife she works for the VA, so she was in touch with the chaplain. She took her bereavement. She came back early, all because of this. And then, so I'm like, babe, you need to file with the ELC. She's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. Then he came in and talked shit to her on a conference call. And I said, see, so she went ahead and filed. So it goes to mediation. The day it goes to mediation, the lady calls us, hey, your boss just quit. Now, here's the problem with that. Do you know his boss blamed her for the guy quitting? So now she's all upset again. She's like, I'm dealing with the same thing. I said, what did I tell you to do in these situations? After you have a conversation with somebody, you send an email to them and their boss and the EOC stating what the conversation was. And he denied everything in that conversation, and he's never bothered her since. We don't know how to fight for ourselves. And they make it seem like fighting is so difficult. The same way when Roscoe was telling you how these guys in the music industry, oh man, that work is so much. You're publishing, that's complicated jargon. You don't get it. That shit. Or when you hear Dave Chappelle talk about the first contract he signs, where it says that your likeness and your image into perpetuity, anywhere in the universe into perpetuity. That's fucking crazy. So you mean to tell me that anywhere in the universe that if Dave Chappelle perform, yeah. So if I'm on Mars, my nigga, if I'm on Venus, my nigga, you get that money, part of that money too. And when you're a kid, you don't know any better because you just want to perform, or you think that that's making it.
Or you want to go along to get along.
To get along, all these situations, but this is the
get along,
oppressor.
go along.
Look. Here's the problem with sucking that much dick is that you start spitting out dumb shit. You literally start reciting their argument for them. It's like, hey, we don't have to do shit anymore. These motherfuckers already brainwashed. The same thing they tell you is you only can kiss so much ass before you start choking on shit. That's that part that being a good employee or being a suck ass. I can be a good employee. That means I do my job every day to the best of my abilities every day because I'm a union rep. I'm no longer a union rep, but I was. But if they wanted me to do some extra shit, I'm like, oh no, I don't get paid for that. Hey, can you say 15 minutes? Yeah, I get 15 minutes of overtime. No, you're paying me. I don't belong to you. So you pay me a good wage. I make you do that. But when you're young, you don't know how to have that conversation. Or worse is you don't want to offend somebody or you don't want to lose sponsors. That's that shit. And right now, this podcast is about the banking industry and how it fucks people. When we were kids, like I said, we used to watch Westerns. They were always about the banker is taking the ranch. That was real. But why were they so eager to take that ranch? Because you would find out there was oil on that motherfucker. So what you would find out is that you had assets that you were not using.
Right. But all these assets we've been talking about are hard assets. These are real things you can actually go out into the world and touch. You can go to the bank, you can withdraw money and have the money in your hand. We are moving into a realm where these intangible things are being quantized and they're being counted and used and mined data. So also, then we get
getting you when you're a kid in school, so you believe it.
So then people will eventually start getting brain chips. And then what will happen with the gray matter of humanity? What will happen with your own thoughts? Are you renting your thought? Are you renting a thought? Are you renting a vacation in your head?
How
Because
about this?
hold on, because you can't afford to own anything, then you have to earn enough credits to go on vacation in your mind.
Hold it. You can't afford to go anywhere. But how about this? How do you know which thought is your gray matter and which thought is the implant? Because if it's the implant, then it belongs to somebody else.
Well, watch this
Because you
shit.
don't
Then, if you don't make enough money, then your thoughts are contained to basic ass consumer thoughts.
look. How about this?
Then,
Check
wait,
this out.
then what happens to your imagination? Do you still have an imagination at that point? Or are you, or is imagination a privilege? Oh, that's dark.
No, no, no. How about this? Like most of us don't. I ain't paid my student loans back. I paid a little bit. But what happens if they were? What
You wait
happens if
on
they
them to
repossess?
write that shit off?
Yeah. Well, what about if they sit there and repossess your brain? See, I used to teach Sunday school, and I told all my Sunday school kids one of the conversations about financial literacy. I was like, how come you don't have a problem getting a loan for a car and paying that, but you have a problem getting a loan to better yourself? Whether you're going to trade school or college, you're like, I don't want to get loans to go to college, but you want to get loans to look fly. So do you see how stupid you are? You see how stupid it is? But you were brainwashed already. So what would happen if you graduated college, they put a brain implant in there, and you don't pay that student loan off? All of a sudden, they repossess your knowledge. Wow, yeah, that fuck you. That would fuck you. Because
Hey, can I
fuck.
can I get those 4 years back? No, you can't. You got to pay for it. But I
Look,
already
hey,
paid
look.
for it. No, you didn't pay. You only paid the interest. You didn't pay the principal.
Well, how about this? Did you take the party and the pussy back too? Because I'll be holding on to the memories. They got kicked it in college. So are you just going to take take the education back, or are you going to take all the
There's a
experience back?
party in the pussy. What's going
There's
on?
party and pussy in college. Let me tell you about it. And so
No, party in the pussy.
it sure is, nigga, sure is. But these are the concepts that they're brainwashing you early in there. And you got to remember, we talk about the education system is about making good workers, but it's also about the colonizer making good fucking colonies.
But
It's
meanwhile,
about
the church has been invaded with prosperity theology.
that's deep. So what they're telling you is if they make you feel guilty before the church made you feel guilty if you was fucking. Now they make you feel guilty if you ain't achieving. If you don't have that third binge, nigga, God has prosperity for you, and you're ignoring His blessings. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you not buying a Benz? Why are you not financing more and being a better slave to the masses? Yeah, that's that shit we talking about. That's that shit that people don't
Hey,
want to
you remember that
acknowledge.
time you saw that cat we know from childhood at your church, and he said he was kind of dismissive and shit. Was he dismissive about the whip that you had?
No, no. He said you still go to this church.
Oh yeah,
That
that's right.
but I'm like, nigga, you standing here. Like you're literally here
You're
talking to me.
here, motherfucker. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
So you
no,
clearly you still go to this church too, motherfucker.
no, he doesn't. He lives someplace completely different. His
No,
mom still
but
goes there.
your ass is standing there on the church ground. So
Cr-
what the fuck are we
yeah,
talking about?
criticizing me. Yeah, that was a real deal. Um, look,
I mean, is it because what they don't have the dope bake sale no more that you fell out of
I
favor
don't.
with it? Like
Yeah,
why don't you why you just like that shit? Like is not just on and popping no more? Like what?
yeah.
like
Where were you going with?
it's
Yeah.
fashionable to go to a certain church.
Well,
We
what you're
know the
saying
answer to
is
that. We know the answer to that.
the truth is that the answer is yes, but especially in Atlanta. But no, what I was saying is that he literally act like so there's something wrong with me for still going to church. Like, hey, I'm just doing this because my mama asked me to do it. I don't give a fuck about church. Like, I get it. You were simply there for her to be proud for a couple of minutes and everybody see you. Yeah, I
Is
get it.
that what he
You're not
said?
there. No, I'm saying what was I'm
What was
saying
his
what was
reason for
being
being
said.
there?
No, that's what he was saying without saying it. Is that I'm in town. My mama asked me to come to church. I don't believe in this shit. Like God is a commodity. I don't believe in this shit.
Well, he also he
Yeah,
on that boule shit, and
yeah.
you know.
He was on that belay butt fucking shit
Man, no,
before it was a
he was
star.
no. He was in the ROTC version of fucking Boulay, man. Like,
Nigga, look, hey, how about this? He would have been at the Puffy party. I wouldn't have.
yeah. You know what's funny, man? I was watching The Closer, Dave Chappelle, The Closer, and he was talking about the time where he got attacked by the goofy dude, the goofy homeless guy, that was planted by those the special interest group.
LBG, yeah, yeah, yeah,
The homeless guy with perfect seats, as he called it, and
yeah. He said,
but
how
he
did he get?
said Puffy was backstage and blocked the door so the guy couldn't get out. I'm like, hmm.
Yeah, Puffy probably knew the guy.
Oh, he got on the seats.
That's funny. Puffy expected it. Look, but if that's the case, that was the same deal when they was talking to T-Boz of TLC, and she said we were going down to fuck the place up, and somebody called and snitched on us. It was Puffy. Puffy said, "Hey, at Arista, hey, TLC's on the way to fight over their contract. Get out, get out, get out, nigga. DEFCON 1. That's that shit.
Wow, that's some
Yeah,
cool shit right there.
look it up. It was T-Boz talking about it recently, but also
Recently?
she was talking about it recently. But I don't know how old the interview was because I had seen the interview before. So let's just say it's probably 3 or 4 years old. But again,
That would have been in that was before Bad Boy. That was like in his Jodeci days when he was
no,
managing
no, no,
Jodeci.
no. That'd be a little bit later because TLC they didn't exist yet because that's when Atlanta got hot. You know,
No,
Atlanta
no,
got
no,
hot.
no, no,
So
no, no, no. TLC. Okay, when TLC was like when their first single came out, Jodeci was
yeah,
just
hold it.
blowing
You are
up.
right. No, hold it. I don't know, but you are right because remember
I got
it
all that shit
was.
on vinyl. This is how I know this shit,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah. It was on the TLC tip, but I'm talking about Waterfalls and shit like that album.
Yes, that's
Um,
95.
yeah,
So
yeah.
by that
Oh,
time, yeah, that's when Biggie is blowing up.
oh, that's crazy. I think you might be right on that one. That's craziness. So yeah, so literally, he wants to protect his masters, and I don't mean his recordings. He wants to protect his
Dude, how
masters.
about motherfucking Craig Mack has been silent for a long time?
That's because he dead. But before that, that was a crazy
When did he
situation.
die?
Craig Mack died about 4 years ago.
What?
Yeah, but here's the issue. Okay, here's the issue with that situation. I was watching an interview with John
How
Sally.
did he die is the question.
No, that is the Puff Daddy curse. Everybody who has anything on Puff Daddy dies. We all know they always die of heart attacks. The only one to survive is Al B. Sure, but Al B. Sure was in a coma for 20 days. That's that whole shit that Jaguar Wright was talking about. And here's my situation. Here's my problem with her. Her first
How did
three
he get
interviews.
into a coma though?
Yeah,
Was he beaten to it?
no, he had a heart attack and he wasn't supposed to survive. Al lived, and so that's how she broke it down. She said that the three people that started Bad Boy, excuse me, started Uptown, and then Bad Boy, they came from Bad. So it was Al B. Sure, Kim Porter, of course Puffy, and there was somebody else. Andre Harrell is the one who it was his handler, and she talks about that shit, and she was right. She's like, it's crazy that everybody has anything to do with Bad Boy dies. Biggie, and when you realize when you talk to Gene Deal, he's like, Puffy didn't care if Biggie lived or died because Biggie was leaving. You know, Biggie had another deal, a big deal for him in Junior Mafia and Little Kim and them. So when you realize that, like, see, Puffy tells on himself. So here's the interview I want you to listen to. Puffy talks about being at the Grammys, and he was talking to Barry Gordy. And he was like, and I guess that year he got Barry had got some kind of recognition, lifetime achievement award type thing. And Puffy said, he's like, hey man, you let all these great acts, Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, these people are still alive. He was naming them all. He said, yeah, but none of them are with Motown anymore. And Puffy admits that changed him. When Barry Gordy told him that all them artists were huge and they're the biggest, Marvin Gaye, they're the biggest in the world, but none of them are with Motown anymore. If you pay attention, Puffy said that changed him. So what did it change about him? He made sure nobody could leave Bad Boy in good standing. Nobody. And if you pay attention, G Dep dead. Who's the other one? Black Rob dead. Craig Mack dead.
Like
Now
Rob is dead?
Black, yeah.
Hold on, how did Black Rob die?
Heart attack.
How?
See, listen to what you're saying. Now you got Suge Knight over there. The only nigga that died over there was Pac. But all them niggas are still alive. The Dog Pound's still alive. Danny Boy's still alive. Snoop's still alive. All them niggas is over there. Now they all left Death Row, but pay attention. Everybody on, I think G-Dep might be still alive because he just got out of jail. Shine is in the Bahamas. He's some kind of president. But pay attention. How many? Kim Porter dead. They tried to kill Anna Harrell dead. They tried to kill Albie Shore. So, and Kim Porter's best friend is dead. That's why Kimora Lee Simmons was out there, because remember that book called Bling? They made sure that book didn't get out. Now, we also know that Puffy is a victim of his own shit, because that was the whole deal with Kim Porter. Remember, she had a videotape of Puffy with something. So
I think he died. I think Black Rob died of comorbidity.
I just think it's odd that everybody with Bad Boys dead and them niggas ain't.
He died in April 17, 2021.
My point being is, how come everybody on Death Row still alive except for Pac?
Mm-hmm.
But everybody on Bad Boy dead, including Biggie. None of the women are dead, though. Oh, I lied. So we just said Kim Porter, but I was referring to Faith Evans. I was referring to Mary J. Blige. I was referring to them. They're still alive, but, you know, they were traumatized by the shit that happened to them and the shit they saw. Look, the whole point we're making is that when you sign a contract, whether it's a banking contract, music contract, whatever kind of contract, that a lot of times that you don't realize your power and you relinquish those rights, especially early on in some kind of business or some kind of business venture. But the thing is, there's somebody there to take advantage of you. There's always somebody trying to take advantage of you. And here's another thing that people aren't catching. When they're talking about Puffy this, Puffy that. So the reason Cassie got her money, and me and you talked about this, is people weren't paying attention. She was suing him for sexual harassment. She was an employee. You can't have sex with your employee. So that's why she sued the way she did. She said she was an employee of Universal and Bad Boy or whoever owns who. And I'm an employee, and he forced me to have sex with him and other people. Everybody thinks that Puffy paid quick because you know, he was this. He paid quick because they told him to pay. And this chick, you were having sex with one of your employees. And that's another thing, as black folks, we don't realize you're not supposed to be having sex with your subordinate. So if you all work for this record company and they're having a bunch of orgies, hey, you could sue your motherfucking boss. And because, like I said, because black folks, we ain't the most professional, we always be fucking at work. Like, hey, I'm gonna get me some pussy at work. But we were taught as kids, don't shit where you eat, son. Like your parents would tell you, don't shit what you eat. Shit where you eat, not what you eat. Don't shit where you eat. And so that's what they mean. Don't create these unprofessional situations that can cause you to lose your company or lose your business. So all these motherfuckers with record labels, they had chicks work. So the person that really needs to be afraid is Jay-Z, because we know he was fucking Rihanna, and Rihanna was his employee, right? We know he was fucking Million, because that was. And we know this shit. So what y'all ain't realizing is that if they realized it, they would come back and sue that nigga for hundreds of millions of dollars. They just don't realize they can't. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, your boss ain't your friend.
And these banks make up shit. They make up shit in court. They make up shit. They make up these ways to play with money.
Yes.
These really rich people sit up and they figure out ways to use people's, basically, man, it's monopoly. And they're saying, okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to come in, we're going to take all of the hotels off the Monopoly board game. We're going to take,
you can't buy them.
You can't buy those. We're going to take all the houses. We're going to take all these assets. We're going to take all the money, but we're going to rent it back to you. And that's the name of the game now. We're going to rent all this shit back to you, and you can rent it from us, like houses. That's what BlackRock is doing.
It's monopoly with real people's lives. That's what it is. And it's a joke. And you're the butt of the joke. If there's no punchline other than you're getting fucked, that's not cool. It's not fair. It's fucked up. You keep seeing these people come, these bright people on JRE. You see these people coming out, but you're not using the information. You're not paying attention. You can patent something. You can trademark something. You're not recognizing that your ability to create, that's the divineness in you, and you need to use that to your advantage and monetize the shit. So once you get enough money, you ain't got to deal with them no more. They don't want a bunch of millionaires, because then they have nobody to do the work. That's why the borders are open right now. We got a bunch of lazy motherfuckers over here that don't want to do shit. And then you believe in AI? What the fuck is that? So a fake nigga gonna take your real job? You a dumb motherfucker.
So there you go. There's plenty of ways for people to run game on you, and you got to stay sharp because they're always coming up with new ways to try and fuck you over. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.